What does it take to roll out an e-learning platform across an entire country? Why is it still a challenge for us in PNG? So in today's conversation, I'm going to be talking to someone by the name of Senyo Mawuli. He's an EdTech professional who has successfully implemented e-learning solutions across 70 plus schools in Ghana. What makes this conversation even more interesting is Senyo used to go to school here in PNG. He grew up here. He was in school one time. So he understands both environments, though the infrastructure was different, but the challenges and how we grew up are the same. He mentioned something at one point when he went back to Ghana. You may be more advanced Ghana. This was 1999, 2000. So in this interview, we're breaking down what worked for Ghana, what didn't, and how PNG needs to think about if we're serious about digital transformation in education. Now, let's get into it. How did you start EdTech Company and what problems were you trying to solve at the beginning?
I'd say basically the idea for starting the EdTech Company, or QKnow EdTech as our company is called. So QKnow basically is the short form of quick knowledge. And then we just joined those two words together because we're looking at giving students access to information, access to learning materials on demand. So that's why we chose that name. So basically, it was through my own experiences, moving back to Ghana, and because I was in an international school back in, PNG, and then to some extent Australia as well. Access to digital or smart, no, let's say computers was very easy, in class, at home.
Yeah.
But then it was a different feeling altogether when I moved back, where I was the only one, or maybe a few of us had access to these same things, at home.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a computer lab in school. So basically, things like research, having access to, Britannica Encyclopedia, Encarta, these were foreign things to other students. So I wanted to make education a lot more accessible to students, just looking at how times were going in terms of a lot more people started having access to smart devices. So the next step would be providing solutions for them to improve upon their academic, outcomes. So in a nutshell, it was basically off my own experiences and then wanting better for the rest of the population.
Sweet. Growing up in PNG
Yeah.
and later building in Ghana, what similarities did you
Yeah.
immediately recognize between the two countries?
I'd say, developing countries usually have some sort of the same challenges or problems. It may be to a greater extent, from one country to the other, but then they're basically around the same thing. So the main thing would be access to the right infrastructure. So when I say the right infrastructure, you're thinking about internet, you're thinking about devices, you're thinking about basically spaces where you could go to have access to these things. So it was very similar in my sense in Ghana and then also in PNG as well. Sometimes you'd be, if you really think about it, it's like you're living in a shell or a bubble, when you don't have the same experiences of other people, maybe lower income households. So you'd think, yeah, you're shielded from these things. But then in order to make a nation really prosper, everybody should have the right or the same chances at being successful. So you'd have a lot of the same problems. Even in Ghana, there were times where constant electricity supply was a challenge, you know. So these things can happen in so many other African countries, which are also developing countries. I'd say the same thing. The reason why I'm always talking about living in a shell is because at the end of the day, we went to an international school, So I was more or less cut off from the experiences of students who are going to maybe public schools in PNG or maybe different types of private schools. So you can't really speak to what they were going through. But then if you look at it holistically, the challenges are the same. in PNG and Ghana, where infrastructure is a challenge, access to, people having readily available, income to spend on other things apart from the necessities. So these are challenges you'd always face, and they cut across everywhere.
What was the biggest infrastructure barriers to rolling out e-learning nationwide, and how were they realistically overcome?
Okay, so I mean, yeah, it always goes back to access to internet, access to smart devices. Um, I think it's only been maybe the last past five to 8 years where there's been intentional movements where the governments are actually trying to furnish schools with these smart tools. So like the tablets, so like every child should have access to a tablet, so just thinking about that, where in the past, especially when we were starting off, you would go to schools that didn't even have computer labs. So it wouldn't work, in the schools themselves. So you'd have to find a way to be able to get them to still subscribe or still buy into the idea, but then they use it at home because then you hope that a few of them would have these tools at home. And if they don't have it personally, then they could use, their parents' own. So access to those smart devices was a challenge because it wasn't, especially in the early 2010s or mid 2010s when we're actually trying to get things rolling. So you're thinking about 2015, 2016, 2017, you approach schools with a brilliant idea. The decision makers are all in agreement. Yeah, they're brilliant ideas you guys are bringing, but then it will be a challenge because we don't have the infrastructure, readily available for any integrations or anything of that sort. Then you'd come on to the next bit where internet, data costs are high. So the next question would be, yeah, we love your idea, but then what is, how much data are we going to be buying to use your products? So you'd have to ensure or sort of convince them that it's not, I mean, you're not going to use too much, so they shouldn't worry about that. Only then do you have, a proper buy-in.
Yep.
Because aside all these two more physical things, it's the next thing would always be the decision makers or the people who have access to the, capital to actually buy these things, where it's an emotional decision as well. How do you ensure that, so like let's say for teachers, for example, all the way back in 2017, 2018, when you're introducing your products into the school, the fear was you're taking their jobs away, you know? And this is way before, yeah, AI was even a thing,
Yep.
you know, on a large scale level. So the fear is there where they could persuade decisions. They're now basically fighting you on decisions because they don't want to become a bit useless, in the school. So you have to convince, um, through that mental, through that emotional,
Yep.
barrier as well. So these are some of the things we faced.
Okay. Compared to PNG today, where do you think Ghana had
Yeah.
an advantage, and where was it actually weaker?
My moving back to Ghana was I mean there was a culture shock as well in terms of, I mean, yeah, it's my country, fine. But I came in as a foreigner more or less, the way I spoke was different. I couldn't speak any of the local languages. Uh, Getting adapted into the educational system was strange. Making friends was, I mean, it wasn't difficult, but you'd have to learn the different ways they do things so that you could properly, acclimatize or incorporate into the system. So the difference, you know, it was a cultural one where in PNG you would have a lot of expats. You had a very solid, African community as well, which, I blended in too without any problems. But then the main challenge, I would say, was in Ghana, we were still a step behind at that time, through the 90s to 2000s. And I always refer back to being in an international school. But then these things were easier to have access to, where you knew at that point in time that, I mean, we're browsing the internet as far back as 98, 99 when I was in, PNG, at home. But then moving back to Ghana, it took some time to actually browse the internet, or with the devices you may have. Yeah, so the telcos, I mean, there have been quite a number of telcos from 2000 until now. Some have even merged together. So I think the biggest telco in Ghana now is MTN. MTN is in several African countries. So currently I'm in Cote d'Ivoire, working on expansion. And MTN is not as big in Cote d'Ivoire as, say, Ghana or South Africa, for example. They have their own trusted provider, which is Orange, a French company. Cote d'Ivoire is a French-speaking company.
Mm.
But in Ghana, you'd have MTN, then you have Vodafone, there was Airtel, which was standalone, then there was Tigo, and now the two of them have merged, just so that they can keep up with the competition. There's also been some rumors of Airtel Tigo merging with Vodafone just to keep up with MTN as well. You know, Wholesale internet providers. There was a time it was more than 10. Where people had licenses. Gradually, it's reduced, but you still have multiple, you know, in
We
the
we o-
system.
we only have one here.
Yeah, yeah. So, so I can see how challenging that is in terms of if the network is not great, then everybody suffers. That monopoly is not the greatest way to do things. And I mean, if you think of it in the Ghana terms, where MTN is the dominant player, the government has actually had to step in and say, because they were offering very cheap bundles, internet bundles, but then they had to step in and say, just to make things fair, they had to increase their offerings just to ensure that, Vodafone and then the rest could at least provide some value as well. Otherwise, it would become a monopoly play. So
Yeah,
these are ways that they're trying to level the playground, a bit.
hard.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of internet, a lot of options.
So many people in PNG are concerned about government control, data privacy, and digital
Okay.
systems being used to monitor people. Did Ghana face
Yeah.
similar fears?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, yeah, there's talk about that quite a bit. People complain. I mean, we have a whole data protection unit, but then sometimes I mean, you could be anywhere and then you get a text message from the brand trying to push their product, or even when it comes to politics, a
Wow.
presidential candidate has sent you a text message, make sure you go and vote. And you're like, how did the person get my data? You know, how because the thought is that once you have a data protection unit in your country, you shouldn't have your data just anywhere. You shouldn't just be easily accessible or monitored. But then you have text messages mentioning your full name, and then the message comes thereafter. So obviously,
Really
the
personalized.
right thing is
Hey,
not being, yeah, the right thing is not being done. Your data is being sold because, I mean, how else do they get access to these things? So
true.
we're not really being protected. It's available for whoever can pay. And you don't know what they're using that information for at the end of the day. So it's a bit dangerous where government can have full oversight on all these telcos having access to these things, or wherever you register for any government related service, it can move on to the next person. So it's not perfect. It's far from that over here. And I sort of empathize with what's happening in PNG currently because it's not the best way to go.
Yeah. How did your platform address trust, data ownership, and transparency to get buy-in from schools
Yeah.
and communities?
Naturally, we did a lot of legwork in the sense that we would go to the school, speak to them, try and understand where no-go areas were in terms of uh, we want this protected, we don't want to share this. So every school is treated, individually, not on a size fits all or
Very
one shoe fits all type thing.
good point. Yeah.
So yeah, we actually did the work, sit down with them, what they'd like to share, what they wouldn't. But then prior to that, we would let them know that these are the things we're collecting. This is how we're storing them, and also ensure or sort of convince them, let them know, through building trust that we have never actually had any leak, prior to that because of how we manage our stuff, how we encrypt our stuff. So that just sort of, reiterated
You
our
built,
commitment to them as
you
as
built trust.
customers, and
You built
yeah,
trust.
yeah, we'll trust. Yeah. So that's what we did, individually per school, and always open to any suggestions, any feedback, and properly getting things right.
What role did
Yeah.
government play? An enabler, a regulator, or an obstacle?
I would say in the beginning, or even till date, there are times where you'd say government is an obstacle, especially for local companies or startups, because you'd be building something, trying your best to get the distribution going, get sales going, at least letting people know that you exist. And then you'd hear government has gone to sign a contract with some foreign entity, basically doing something similar to what you're doing. And then it almost puts you out of business. One thing we, smaller businesses always feel is that when government brings these things through, they don't really follow through with them. So then they end up waning off and then just dying. So it always tests your resilience in that sense where, I mean, yeah, they brought this in, but how do we, you know, go through the test of time to ensure that when their time is up, because the project wasn't really managed, we are still there to plug in, you know? So that was very important for a lot of small businesses, a lot of small growing tech companies to just wait things out.
Yeah.
Over the last maybe 10 years, there's been more willingness for government to work with, local tech companies because they now see that we do provide value. We do build like how the foreign companies are building, and we do have the solutions that they're looking for outside. But then we need that help to become more visible, because if you're not visible, then people won't know what's going on. And there's a very good example of that happened last year where an AI contract for like languages for schools or was given to a foreign company. Meanwhile, there was a very able, capable research, company, AI research company building AI tools for so many local languages in Ghana
Wow.
was there. And it had to take a lot of people coming together to push their name through so that they met with the minister in charge, of this problem. So the visibility really helps, but then we all have to try to lift each other up.
Yep. From your experience, what mistakes should PNG avoid when expanding digital education?
Mm,
That's a good question, eh?
I think, yeah, yeah, it's a good one. I think one, don't overlook, local solutions. I mean, if they're local builders in the ecosystem, you shouldn't, overlook them because they're building out of context. They know what the system is like.
True, very true.
So, yeah, I mean, there's so many other, flashy options that may not have done the work, and I just bring in what they have to offer. And, it happens so many times in so many different countries where the context is not taken into account. And then you bring the flashy thing and it just doesn't work because they just don't know what the system is like. So I'd say,
Right.
yeah, avoid that. Next, ensure that the right infrastructure is set up because that's the only way to have distribution going on. Um, and people would say we want to have digital learning or, online learning solutions and other things, but you haven't really provided what these things, would work on. So then it becomes a problem because these local builders would have the things set up, and there's no way to actually have them work properly. And then they end up just fizzling out. You have a bad user experience because infrastructure wasn't right, internet wasn't working well. And then any decision maker would be like, yeah, this is not for me, and wouldn't want to embrace digital education or anything of that sort ever again. So these are off the top of my head, these are the major things to avoid, when it comes to mistakes.
Correct. They always have this need to go for white label off the shelf
Yeah,
applications.
yeah, yeah. And it's these white labels, they're built for wholesale
Yeah.
stuff. And by the time you realize it's not fit for your context, it's too late, you've spent so much money, you don't have enough money for the local providers, and then they get shortchanged, then it's always about the value you get it, because you'd always go for these white label first. You pump in millions just to get things off the ground. And by the time, you're done and you've noticed this segment of the demographic and you actually use what you're providing, you only have a couple 100,000 left in your coffers, and that's what you offer to the local, solution providers. And because they're also yearning for recognition or a contract, they have to end up taking that. And it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
They manage where they can. Yeah. So there needs to be a proper, policy around procurement, around giving out tenders. To you look inward first, and then you look outward. You get it. If the capacity is not there in-house, then you can look outside. And even when you do look outside, have them work with the local people so that they can train them on where their shortcomings are. And then if they have to leave the country, you do have these local solution providers who
SM
have the capacity
subject
to
matter
work
expert.
at scale. Exactly. Exactly. So there should be that process, or there should be that policy, so that you do things for yourself. You're self-sustaining, I mean,
Correct.
I believe in trade and other things. I would love, my products to get into Europe, get into the US, get into Australia. These are more advanced countries, but then they'll look at us like, you're from a developing country, so there's no use. So then we have to work with the developing countries. So you move from side to side, you move to, the island regions. Let's say, you're moving to PNG, you're coming to Fiji, you're coming to Samoa, all these islands of Jamaica and other things, because you feel that these are your kin, these are people you can actually work with, because if they're not at your level, then maybe they're a step below or a step just above, but then you can work with them. But we should also have to build and then, trade our platforms or our solutions to develop countries where we can provide value. So it's a tough ask, but I mean, we can only dream. Yeah.
What gives you confidence that countries like Ghana and PNG can leapfrog digital instead of following slow traditional paths?
We have skipped a few steps, especially in Ghana, where we haven't figured out everything, and then now we're trying to move full speed into digital, full speed into AI, because it's the new flashy thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at these developed countries, there's a process that they went through, They had the industrial phase, manufacturing, and all these things, and then they made their way to the digital internet businesses and other things. I think we still haven't properly figured out manufacturing and then the industrial, um, revolution. And we're trying to skip to the fourth revolution, which is, future of work and all these things. But then there's so many things that we can do for our own countries if we say, let's become experts in developing proper roads, because the road networks are the best. access to clean drinking water, things that recycling, you know, producing our own things, making our own clothes,
Yeah.
at scale, you know. Um, these are options where you can still build these things and then make a great living for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have, because so many people go to school, university, and then they want to come out and then they want the white collar job, They
Yep.
want to be in a corner office. They want, to wear a suit, a tie, to wear a very nice dress, these things. So you have education system where you are basically teaching people how to get jobs, not how to build businesses. And even if you're going to teach how to build businesses, the different types of businesses, not just technology, but then
Yeah.
industrial, finding raw materials because recently it was said that we've discovered lithium in Ghana, and lithium is great for batteries,
I heard that. Yep.
all these how do you call it? Electric cars, they need lithium batteries.
Yep.
So if you had a lot more people, you're training a lot more people to discover where these lithium is, process the lithium locally, because up to a time we would harvest cocoa and we are still doing that and then export it out to be processed.
Yeah.
We're not processing it locally. And if you're training people on these methods, doing these, having this knowledge locally, then you have a lot more processing plants where cocoa is processed. We are doing our own type of Cadbury, chocolates, shipping that out, into the markets all over, So we've skipped a step,
Yep.
and it's not to our own doing, but because we've learned that you go to school, you get the job. You get it. So
Yep.
then other people are not taking risks. Like I've seen this gap where I can actually be a chocolate processor, process cocoa and then make chocolate, or there's steel. I can become a large steel supplier or, use steel to in building, we're discovering lithium, I can use this, all these mining and things where we are inviting people from developed worlds to come and mine on our behalf and then take these things out, cut deals where they're not favoring us. But because they have the know-how, they have the technology and other things, they come and do all that. So I think we've skipped a step. So then now, if we're going to look at how digital is going to work for both these countries, I mean, we'll do the best we can. But I think if it's true that AI is going to take a lot of the jobs, fine, let them take the jobs. Let's go back to what, we have to do in terms of the industrial revolution, the manufacturing and things, and sort that out so that we have better cities, better rural areas, and we are self-sustaining because we are producing the physical things. And if we have to give up the more, soft skills, the more that type of knowledge, smart knowledge, then we give that up and then just improve the country from there. So it's a bit of a dicey situation, but I think there's an out for us
Okay.
if we apply ourselves. Yeah.
Do you have anything to say if someone wanted to start something like in PNG?
Yeah, I'd say do a lot of research, believe in yourself, and I mean, just give it a shot. Luckily for us, you're growing. I mean, when you are giving yourself, or when you're giving it a shot and you're making some good traction, people are watching, You have investors who are looking at other, areas to put money in. You have partners who are looking at how can I work in PNG, for example, So you just have to be visible. You have to get people who are pushing you. And when in developing countries, there's no way you can do without the, I mean, government's help. Be it approvals, be it just a pilot phase, just them acknowledging what you're doing. You just have to find a way to be some way diplomatic, get that access, and then just give it a shot. Lifetime, we've done over 70.
70 schools.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So majority in Ghana. Currently I'm in Cote d'Ivoire, at least trying to recruit 15 to 20. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, but then, you have Kenya as well. Just it really depends on we like to go the B2B route. So the type of products would build will ensure that, we have to work with schools. But then we do a lot of B2C as well, where the product can be used, by a single person. So yeah, I mean our first hope is always B2B first,
Yep.
so that we can get a lot more schools with a lot more users at once. Yeah. So I mean, we're still in the process of growing, we're still learning from mistakes, and we're still hopeful. And that's what you need to have, the hope.
Well, bro, I'm so proud of what you're doing in Ghana.
Thank you. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, I've been following you. Was this 2020?
Yeah.
Was it 2020? 2019?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 2020 very heavily, but then let's say 2017, 2018,
Yeah, yeah.
testing the market and other things. Yeah.
Started making headway in 2020.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But thanks. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Senyo. There's one thing to take away from this, is that digital transformation isn't just about technology. It's about infrastructure, planning, and execution. If you found value in this, make sure to subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear. And if you want to be part of our community, that's learning, building, and having these discussions in the Digital One Talks community, I'll have the link in the description, as well as it's in our bio. So I'll see you in the next one. Peace.